All right, so this is our weekly Take Your Health Back Now podcast. This episode is part two. So if you can listen to this one without hearing the first one, but we recommend listening to that one too. We're just doing current events, topics, things for you to understand and be aware of in 2024 that definitely have a big effect on your health. You need to be empowered to make choices for yourself. Can't do that if you don't have the information. So these are things that don't really get discussed or explained in mainstream media or even non-mainstream media. They might mention them, but we try to at least help you understand things so you can make your own decisions.
Right. And there's
So
a quote that we love, where there's a risk, there must be a choice.
yeah.
And that goes for anything in your life. And you cannot make a choice. If you think about choice is the first step to doing anything. Doesn't matter. It doesn't have to be health. It doesn't have to be business. Whatever it is, you have to make a choice to do something. And you can't make a choice without information. And if you don't make a choice, somebody else is doing it for you. If you're going to be empowered, you have to have that choice. So that's why we give you this information.
Right.
Sometimes I hear people say, why do you guys talk about all this scary stuff? I'm like, well, because it is happening and you need to know. And then you can choose to do whatever you want to do, but at least you know. That's our goal.
Yes. I inform lots of people of lots of things. I don't necessarily enforce my choices on them, though.
Right. But if you do agree with us, then we have lots of answers that will help. Anyway, okay, so we're going to dive right in. So hopefully you watched or listened to the last week. And like Jenni said, you don't have to, but if you didn't, you should go back, because these two together are kind of an overview of what's going on now and moving forward. And it's affecting everyone. It's not just, people that are having health issues or that are in this group or listening to this podcast. It's everyone. So, if you need to share with anyone or, with your family, know the information. So we're jumping right in today we're starting with edible vaccines. Excuse me. So these have already been developed. They're already in the works. They're being used for animals and wildlife right now.
Yeah.
In fact, I can't remember what month it was, maybe October or November. They did a big drop in Tennessee where they decided they would just drop these edible vaccines, like fly over, drop them. And then the goal is to lure raccoons, and I think in that case it was like raccoons and maybe coyotes and wolves or something, to vaccinate them from rabies. That was the goal. But they're definitely in production all over the place. Also, they've already made them for people. They're not available yet.
Right. They're not approved for use, but they are.
Right.
Like they're not to market.
Right. Some of them they're still working on. Some of them they're already approved. Like there's a edible vaccine in a tomato, and it even is called tomato vac, VAC. So you can look that up. And then they're also doing it, or they have developed them for potatoes, bananas, lettuce, corn, soy, rice, legumes, that tomato, and then working on leafy greens. So coming soon. So watch for that. And I'm sure they will have it, they will call it something, kind of like with the lab grown meat. They call it something, but not lab grown meat. So it doesn't sound quite as scary. So I'm sure it will not be called edible vaccines in your vegetables. So watch for that. But it is out there for wildlife and pets. Then we have on the list green cremation. So again, this is something this is not new this year. This has been going on for the last few years, but it's just going to keep rolling out more, it's definitely tied to the green agenda and the climate change agenda, because they make it sound very lovely. And cremation actually is really toxic.
Yeah.
Clearly, it's not a good option. I mean, there are no good options when it comes to that, unfortunately. But this green cremation, their marketing is something really great. But the thing is, on the back end of it, and the last time I looked, there are 23 states that allow this. There may be more now, I'm not sure. We're here in Illinois, and Illinois does allow this. But this green cremation is, you are put in a pod of extremely alkaline solution. So it's basically lye is what you're in, and water. But it dissolves the body. This is gross, but it's for real. This is really going on. So it dissolves the body within a couple hours, and they market it as just like as nature intended. If
just
you
sped up.
right, if the natural process.
It's so like serial killer vibes to me. I can't get past the serial killer vibes that like this is what people did to like hide bodies.
Right.
Like that house in Chicago, that's what they did.
Right, exactly. Right. But if you look it up, it's kind of like what I talked about in the last podcast with the, like Cargill or the ADM plant, things like that. They make it sound so lovely and so green and such a good option, and it just makes you want to do it. But if you really look into it, like we're talking about, it's not a good option. So then, when you're thinking about anything, and so much of this is common sense if you just think, right? So you're thinking about this, okay, they did that. They dissolved the body. Yay, it's not being burned up and put into the air. So that's good. But okay, now where does that solution go? Because it just doesn't magically disappear, right?
Right. Do they put it in an urn for the family and it's just sloshy instead of ashy?
Well, they do take they siphon it, and they take the bone remains just like they would with cremation, but it's, whatever is left. There's some bone particles left that they give to the family, put in an urn or whatever. But the solution itself, they put it in the biosludge. So it is sprayed on conventional crops. So if you're still eating conventional anything, so that would be corn, soy. If you're eating packaged food, you are eating that. Any kind of conventional crops that aren't organic are allowed to have biosludge sprayed on them as a fertilizer.
Yeah, we've talked about this, but I feel like it's been a while since we talked about biosludge, which is just gross. So if you don't know what that is in general, outside of this new cremation thing we're talking about, you should go back and it's gross.
Yeah, so biosludge is basically, it always comes down to we produce so much waste because we just are over consumers all the time. So if you think about our sanitary systems, okay, we now have a sanitary system, you flush your toilet, it goes down. This is discussing topic, sorry. But, it goes into the municipal system. But again, think about it. Where does that go?
Right.
Just magically disappear. So they actually take the water out. They filter the water out, which actually, after being filter processed, goes back into the tap water. But all of that solid stuff that's left is they have to do something with it. So that's why they made biosludge legal to spray.
Is it legal everywhere now? I thought it was like certain states.
Yeah, it's certain states, but there's a lot of the states.
Yes.
So
the ones that have most of the agriculture.
Yes. Yeah, really. I mean, it is. It's most of the states with agriculture. But look up your state, you can see. And not all the states that allow biosludge allow this green cremation to be added to biosludge and sprayed on the crops. But there are many states, and like I said, Illinois does happen to be one. But yeah, so just think about what that entails. So anything that that person has gotten, plus it's just, you know, gross because it's also, it's DNA, you know, it's DNA. DNA is really tiny. So they're spraying that on the crops. So another reason to avoid conventional food of
Yeah.
any.
And also another reason why you need to live a healthy, sustainable lifestyle in a real way, not in a I'm buying lab grown chicken way,
Right.
because we do overconsume and then we have all these problems. And the people that make the money come up with these awful solutions. Like, this is the way that they take something that was a waste product and now it's a product they can probably eventually make some money on because they're selling it as fertilizer.
Right.
If we were all less wasteful, again, in a real way, not in the agenda way, we wouldn't have to be coming up with these crazy solutions like biosludge and live funeral or cremations.
Live funerals. That's another topic. Yeah, so anyway, just think about that. But this all ties back to the whole climate change agenda. Yeah. You know, the climate change, we keep talking, you know, I think in the podcast last week, we talked about listening to words and how everything that is real right now, they're taking and just spinning. It's like in a mirrored effect, right? We've talked about that a lot in various podcasts over the last couple of years, but climate change is one of them. Yes, scientists say we are in the 6th extinction period because, right, and it is man-made, it is what we are doing to the planet. But this climate change agenda is, the spin is not the same. So there's the real thing happening, and then there's the agenda happening, right? So just always keep that in mind too. I don't even know where I was going with that. Okay, so the next thing, we talked about the green cremations. Then we have, what's the next thing? Oh, okay. So then the next
devices, yeah.
Yeah, so the amount of, you know, we talk about EMFs and EMRs, so the radiation. So we've talked about this on other podcasts before, but remember that anything that's coming off a wireless device is really not in sync with us naturally. Anything that is power, you know, even your outlets, you know, even if you have things plugged in, all of that emits EMFs, all of it. But there's so many wireless devices now, and it just keeps growing, and it's really affecting everyone's health, and not even human health, like all life on the planet right now. So I just had some statistics on our list here. So at the end of 2023, there are 17 billion wireless devices. That's hard to imagine. And, you know, if you think about, so we're talking EMFs, but now think about how fast people turn over their devices. They want the new one. There's new things coming out. Now I want that one. Okay, what happens when it breaks? Then you put it in the garbage. I mean, and all of that. I mean, if you think about the downstream of all of those, I mean, that's a different topic, but that's something else to consider. But with the EMFs, so 17 billion devices, and the whole idea is connecting to the Internet of Things, right?
Right. And this isn't like there's 17 billion devices in the world. This is like 17 billion devices actively being used. This is not the ones that are, you know, been thrown away or not being used anymore. Like, those are like daily active used devices. That's a lot.
And think how many more times of devices that is than even people.
Yeah.
And then, so then the next one is there are 9 billion phones, cell phones. And again, that was the end of 23, and that is actively on cell phones. That's not your cell phone from 2000.
Right. That you've got in the back of that closet in that box.
Right. You don't know what to do with it. Right. So that is 9 billion phones worldwide. So 17 billion devices, 9 billion phones. Then you have 9,000 right now satellites beaming 5G back down on us. And those are going up every day, more and more and more. And and that's like what's coming off the cell towers. A lot of people understand cell towers, but a lot of people do not understand the satellites. I can't tell you how many times I see people show a picture of Starlink that they see in the night sky, and they're like, what is that? I saw this thing. I have no idea. It's beautiful.
Well, yeah.
Right.
It's crazy. If it's not in my backyard, then it doesn't matter. It's like people something, oh, I don't want a landfill in my backyard, but I'm still gonna throw away all this waste. It just needs to be somewhere else.
Right.
you
They don't
know,
think about it.
and then they don't think about it. And yes, unfortunately, we haven't really figured out rules for space, like who's allowed to put stuff up there. Everybody, anybody. So that is one that is just exponentially increasing right now, that the people are concerned not just of the like EMFs and that kind of stuff, but just blocking our earth, our planet. Like we're going to be all filled.
Right.
And what is that going to do?
Right. And even like astronomers, you can't,
Yeah.
constellations that have always been the same, and, the beauty of the night sky and that type of thing, it's going to be filled, because their goal for how many they want up there to complete and again, it comes down to the Internet of Things with the satellites.
Yeah.
It's all, to connect everything. I forget what the number is. I don't think I wrote that down. Yeah, I didn't write it down, but
Yeah, I don't have that either.
it is a huge number if you think about how many they want to put up, and it's like soon. It's within like by 2025, I think.
Yeah.
So it's crazy. So that's coming down. You've got all these devices coming down. And remember, with EMFs, it's a load. So it's like in your house, how many devices do you have in your house? You have, like, say 9. You have a family, they all have cell phones. People have wireless speakers, there's wireless toys, there's wireless, I don't even know, because I try not to have any, but I know there's a lot. Or everybody has those wireless phones. You see wireless earphone, all those things. Anything that's wireless, it's like
You just called them all phones. Did you mean the watches and the earbuds?
oh, earbuds, yeah. All the things, the
Yeah.
things. But it's an accumulative effect.
Yes.
And so it's an accumulative effect on how that load is coming in and affecting your body in your
Right.
cells.
And you can look on maps and see, like, if you're in a pretty dense population area, you're probably going to have a lot more of like the antennas and the stations like around where you live, so your load's a little bit higher. But with all these satellites and all the idea that they want like global connection rather than local connection, pretty soon it's just going to be wrapped everywhere. Like you're not going to be able to be like, well, I'm off the grid, so I don't have any exposure. Like you're not going to be able to get away from it.
No. And the whole idea with the satellites was to make sure that there's no place on Earth where but again, they come across, it's the words they come across. It's a good thing because they're making sure that every place on Earth has access. So that's the words, but it's coding. It's like a blanket coding the whole Earth. And then on top of all of that stuff, you've got the smart meters. So there are 13 billion, again, billion smart meters that have been mandated. So most places now are turning to it's mandated. Like here, like for instance, we're in Bloomington, Illinois. So in town, when I lived in town, I could call and say, I don't want this on my house. And you had to pay extra, but they'll come and take it off your house. And then they have to send a meter person out. In our new house, it's a different provider and it's mandatory. You don't have a choice. You can't even get it taken off of your house. So yeah, they're just rolling them out. And again, they don't tell you, they don't ask people if they want them. They don't say, do you have somebody that this might affect their health in your house? They just literally come out and change it.
Right.
I've had that happen several times. where I just looked outside. I chased somebody down one time in the winter. Remember that? That's how I learned.
Yeah, that was a long time ago. And I don't even know if it's really per provider anymore, because the providers, what they're doing is they're lobbying legislation so that they can mandate it, so that, they don't have to give you options. So I feel like all of the utilities are going to be there. If they're not already, they're going to be there soon, because it makes them more money because it's easier. They have less employees. They market it as being more accurate for you, like your bill is more accurate to what you're using, which is probably true, but like a teeny tiny bit. You only had like that, every other month a person would come out, so then it averaged. I'm sure that the savings is not very significant. But now it's like in the moment, it can send information back. Some of them, the person has to drive by and be like, and some of them are just constant.
Right. But always remember with these wireless devices, and it doesn't matter what kind of wireless devices, your watch that's monitoring all of your health. People that had Fitbits, those were recalled for a while. I don't even know if they have Fitbits anymore. But anything that is sending information in, sending information out, it's a back and forth thing. So like the smart meters, it's constantly sending the information out, but they can also send information in. So just keep that in mind. And then on top of all of that, then we have, hold on, it's hard to read my notes. Okay, so the 13 billion smart meters, then we have 5 million cell towers worldwide. And those are constantly, you notice them popping up all over. So that's constantly growing. So 5 million cell towers. And now, if you notice, on top of water towers, you'll start seeing a lot of 5G towers on top of water towers now. And if you think about water imprints, there's been lots of studies on water. If you talk mean to water, it makes distorted crystals. If you tell water you love it and you appreciate it, gratitude, it makes beautiful crystals. You play scary music next to it, that makes these distorted crystals. If you play, a beautiful symphony next to it, it makes beautiful crystals. So think about what the 5G on top of the water towers is doing to the water that now everyone's drinking. So that's an extra thing that's
And if you've never, like, if that seems crazy to you about the water and the crystals, you should look it up and see it, because it is so, I don't even know the word for it. It's just crazy to look at it and see that. And it makes sense because it's energy and it's frequency, and clearly water is a great conductor, so it's not that big of a leap to even imagine it, but seeing it's really cool.
Yeah, Dr. Emoto is the doctor that first did all the research on it. It's really fascinating. He made a book, and there are people now that are doing research on it, so it's definitely out there. But I mean, that's even like a 6th grade science project,
right?
And same with plants. There's lots of 6th grade science projects that show if you speak, words are powerful. If you speak unkind words to a plant, it will not grow. It will be sickly. You speak kind, loving words to a plant right next to it that's the same, type of plant, it's growing like crazy and healthy.
Right. Or, good, healthy filtered water versus water that's been microwaved, and how differently the plants grow. Yeah.
Yeah. There's a lot of very basic science experiments. Your own
yeah. You don't have to understand really how it works, but you can very easily see the difference in the transformation.
Definitely. Or even your cell phone. I mean, just like a wireless device near a plant, and then one that is near a crystal, they'll grow differently.
Yeah.
So it's another one that's, and that's not crystal woo-woo stuff. That's literally that. And we have a whole podcast on this too, but it's, the crystal is nature. So you are connected to everything in nature, including us, are all connected. But this wireless stuff is not natural to us. And so it doesn't make us healthy.
It's like think of chords and frequencies in music and how they go together, or they're
right. That's how I always think of it.
Yeah.
if you think about, a symphony, if you've ever gone to see a symphony or some kind of, classical, an orchestra or something, when they're warming up, even when they're warming up and they're all playing different something,
Right.
not sound bad because they're all in tune, and but the music is so beautiful. But if you had all these instruments and had them completely out of tune and everybody's going, like, remember when people first start playing the violin and it's so
Right. Like if you're in like a fourth grade orchestra class when they're warming up versus like the New York Symphony.
exactly. Yeah. Or you have people scratching on a chalkboard or something awful that just makes you, that's
Right.
kind of how the EMFs affect us.
Yes. And then you can't see music and you can't, like if you describe it, it's something that you just feel if it's good or bad, right? And that's how it's tied. Like that's why I envision it with electricity, because you can't really see the frequencies, you can't see the energy, but you can tell if it's good or bad. Your body knows.
Right. Or just like if you're in a building where there's all kinds of fluorescent lights and there's all kinds of wireless devices, it makes you not really feel right. I mean, a lot of people are sensitive and really don't feel good. But then you walk out and you walk into the forest and you feel like almost instantly, I would say most people could realize that they feel so much better.
Yeah.
So it's exactly what you just said. It's just that you can feel it. Anyway, we got sidetracked here. Let's see.
We have gotten sidetracked a couple of times today.
Okay, so that was the wireless devices, but you get the idea, and they are just compounding very quickly. And think how, it's only been a couple decades since we even had when these wireless devices first came out, right?
Mhm.
And so think about now where we are and how that must be affecting our health and the health of all life. And so the next one we have, well, I had the climate change agenda, but most, we keep talking about it. And so just watch for that.
Yeah.
So every time, and that's another thing. We have wireless cars now. Wireless cars? No, electric cars. But that's what I meant. You're literally sitting inside.
Yeah, they're all wireless.
Yeah. But I mean, the electric cars, you're inside a giant computer. You've got that, you're sitting on a giant battery. You've got the big computer screen in front of you. The EMFs in there are so high, or even in regular cars, you've got Bluetooth and you've got,
And they're all going more computer based. Even if even if you're not an electric car, you're going to have a giant touch screen. You've got a computer. More and more of the engine is computerized. So
here they're getting worse. But that load, like I know people that have to have an old car,
right.
people are really EMF sensitive in order to feel okay when they're driving. And then we have, okay, so we'll just skip the climate change because we know almost every single thing we're talking about ties back to this climate change agenda.
Yeah.
So keep that in mind. And then we have the chemtrails. I will say that New Hampshire had a bill, was it last month? I think that they're trying to make a law that is trying to put a halt to, the chemtrails and weather modification. It's a great bill, very exciting. But the thing is to think about, they wouldn't have this bill they're trying to make into law if this wasn't a bad thing going on, right? I mean, if it was a good thing, they wouldn't be trying to
stop it.
Right.
Yeah.
And they're trying to stop it globally. That's their goal. So I don't know what's going to happen with that, but
yeah, that is a good one for people to look up.
Yeah, but at least it's out there now. There's so many people that over the years have said, well, there are no chemtrails. That's not true. They're just the airplanes. No, that's not true. But you can't not believe it now, but you can't.
I mean, you can literally pay a company to make sure the weather is nice for you on your outdoor wedding.
Right. And that's been several years.
Yeah.
Like 2 or 3 years ago, we did a podcast and we were talking about that. That's been out there a long time. People just don't pay attention. They've been using weather modification. They used it in the Vietnam War. I mean, this has been going on for a long time. Right. Was it the Super Bowl a couple years ago? Oh no, it was the Olympics. When the Olympics were in China, I can't remember exactly where it was, Beijing maybe. They used weather modification to make sure the Olympics were ideal weather the whole time. So yeah.
And before they can use it, you know, specifically and correct, like to make things like that actually happen or to profit off of it because they're selling you a nice wedding day, it has to get tested. They have to see how it works. And how do you think they do that? They're not experimenting on weather inside of a lab. Like
right.
They have to do it in the weather.
Right, exactly. Where they're flying over and they're spraying things. And how do you get there? It's called cloud seeding. You can look it up. But there have been thousands and thousands of air samples and studies on what they are actually spraying. And you cannot nobody can say that they're not spraying anything that's bad for us because it's evident. I mean, it's there. There's so much of it. But what they're spraying is there are all kinds of heavy metals because that's how they manipulate the weather. Also, part of what they're spraying has to do with the Internet of Things again, because if they're constantly spraying these heavy metals, aluminum, and they need that for a conductor that connects the satellites all the way down to us, because the idea is to have the Internet of Things, the Internet of bodies, all life connected to the Internet. That's the goal. So they need this in the air, right? So they're spraying that. They're also spraying smart dust in the air. You can look that up too. That's been, I think, since maybe 2014. They've been spraying that. And those are little, almost like tiny little computers. I'm not the techno person, so I'm probably not describing it correctly, but they're like little nanobots that can self-assimilate. And again, the whole idea is collecting data, from
I think agriculture was the big push for that.
Was the first one. Yeah. And so that they can get the data back in real time, constantly back and forth. And again, it's that back and forth. But it's everywhere. We all have it in our bodies because we've been breathing it. It's breathing it, it's in our water, it's everywhere. They're spraying that. They're also nanoparticles. So nanoparticles are 100 times smaller than a regular particle. It's crazy, but if you look it up, it's hard to even imagine how tiny.
Tiny.
They cross the blood-brain barrier. They can cross the intestinal barrier. They can go everywhere. And so again, there's no. I mean, you can't not be coming in contact with them.
Right. Think of like plastics, because that's been in the news a lot, so people maybe understand that a little bit better, how like we're just now telling everyone that, oh, the plastics are even, there's smaller pieces that we couldn't see before, nanoparticles of plastic. So guess what? They're in everything.
They're saying it's because of we use so much plastic, but that's not it. They're also spraying these pieces because it helps with the weather manipulation. And there was a malfunction here where I live. It must have been a malfunction of one of the planes spraying, and it sprayed a whole bunch. I was at my mom's house.
Oh yeah, that was weird.
We were out like scooping it up, but it's like what's inside of a diaper, like a disposable diaper. If you open it and it got wet, those particles soak up all that moisture. You know what I'm talking about? Like beads, micro beads. But it was all over her yard. It was all over the roof of my car. That's how we found it in the first place. But and then I researched it, and they're spraying it because it absorbs like 4,000 times its weight in moisture. So it's again part of that weather manipulation. They don't call it manipulation. They have a nicer word. I can't think what it is now.
No, I don't. I always just call it that. So
yeah. And there are also fiberglass particles, and now there's so much of it now. If you park your car outside, you'll notice it.
Yeah.
You'll see it on your car. And then it's like tiny, almost like little tiny hairs, really little white particles. And you go wash your car, you leave it outside, pay attention. You'll notice the next day it's on your windshield again. So that's what that is. And then, so anyway, we'll stop with the chemtrails, but this is definitely going on. And this is again worldwide. This is
Right. So just be aware that we are now capable of not only seeing things that are teeny, teeny, tiny nano, but we're capable of creating them as well. And that is making you have exposure. Like Kendra said, you can't control it. You can't stop it. You think about what, if you rub garlic on your foot, you can taste it because stuff gets through your skin. But now these are so small that even more is getting in. So you really have to foundationally be healthy. Your detox systems have to be working because you are going to get exposed to all of these things every day.
And the way you have control, because clearly we have no control of this stuff, the way you have control is choices you make in the food you're eating, the products that you're buying, what you're putting on your skin, if you have a water filter, all these things, and then being as healthy as you possibly can, like Jenni said, so that your body is working as optimally as it can. So that your body can deal with this onslaught of what we're exposed to. The other thing with the chemtrails, I was going to say is now, again, with the climate change agenda, they're, like you hear about dimming of the sun project, that kind of thing. And that's what this is. But now they've gotten to the point where they're telling you so that now it sounds like, oh yes, we do need this, kind of thing. We were gonna mention GMO labeling. So things don't say GMO anymore. Now they say genetic engineering.
Yeah.
But when you see when you see genetic engineering, they mean GMOs, that we used to have. But remember on the last podcast, we talked about synthetic engineering or synthetic biology.
Yeah.
That actually is genetic engineering. But
right. So it's like GMO label wasn't quite descriptive enough of everything. So now it's genetically engineered, which encompasses even more, like the synthetic biology and that kind of stuff.
But the synthetic biology doesn't have to be labeled. That's the thing. It's like a trick. Right. So the GMOs, they changed it because people knew to look for GMOs. Now they're saying genetic engineering. I would think people looking for GMOs would also think genetic engineering doesn't sound good.
Like modified seems less bad than engineered to me.
Right. Me too. But the actual genetic engineering, they don't have to label at all because it's natural, even though it's not. And then we just wanted to mention about the word fragrance, or the word perfume. Now the amount of chemicals they allow in that one word is up to 4,000 plus chemicals. And when Jenni and I started doing this, like 15, 20 years ago, it was about up to 500. So now we're at 4,000. So just keep that in mind. And that's one word.
And that's an excellent example of profits over people. Like the reason that companies can get away with that, because you think, well, it's ingredients, they have to label all the ingredients. No, they can just put fragrance because they've lobbied it so where that's a trade secret. If they put all the ingredients, then someone else could copy that scent. So it's like copyrighted or trademarked, trade secret. So they don't have to tell you what's in it. And it's just a bunch of chemicals. So it's really because people wouldn't want to buy something that had 4,000 ingredients on the list.
And I think word.
Right. So like, I think most people would look at something like that and be like, even if they have no idea about any of this stuff. So it's just become a way for companies to get away with putting a lot of really bad things without people being aware.
Right. And they don't all have to be tested.
No.
And on top of not being having to be tested, there is zero testing on those 4,000. Think about if you put 4,000, you're making cookies. What if you're making chocolate chip cookies and it had 4,000 ingredients, the recipe? And imagine if you put 4,000 different things in your mixing bowl and now mixed it up and there's no testing on any kind of a reaction between them. And think about if two of the ingredients were vinegar and baking soda. I mean, think of that reaction. And what if there were all kinds of other reactions going on? I mean, it's like a toxic soup.
And that's just one example, but what we're saying about this, about the testing and the reactions, that's all chemicals. That's not just ones that are hidden. Like
Right.
they don't the government does not require companies to do testing on, we put these 5 ingredients together. How is that going to affect people short term, long term? No, those 5 ingredients are already approved for use, so they can just put them together. And then if someone happens to have a terrible reaction, they'll probably pay them off or their family. But then if there's a bunch of them and it keeps happening, then the government might come in and say, hey, you need to stop using that one combination of these things.
Right.
Maybe.
Yes. And then on top of those 4,000 chemicals, they're also, they can add synthetic biology, or, that we talked about in the last podcast. They can add that into the mix too. And remember, that has zero testing. So it's called synthetic biology. It's also called bioengineering, biotechnology. There's so many different words for it, but it has been deregulated by the government. So there is zero regulation. Anyone can make it, and it's cheap. It's CRISPR technology. It's cheap to make. We could get a machine for a couple $1,000s and make anything we wanted. And there's zero regulation. We don't even have to tell anyone we're making it or putting it in anything. But my point is, there's a lot of those type of ingredients also in just that one word, fragrance. So just to be aware. And then that sounds scary. And what do I do? But literally, what do? You don't buy anything that has that word.
Right.
And if you don't buy anything that has that word, you just avoided all of that.
Yeah.
So really it is easy when you feel empowered, and using more like a common sense approach. You just completely, and you can. And then our very last, we have 2 more things. So one thing, there is one particular brand that's really got me lately, and I will not say the brand because I don't want to call out anyone, and I'm sure there are plenty of other brands. It just happens to be this one that I see all the time. They put it out there, like their whole thing. I was going to say their whole shtick. It's not a shtick, but their marketing is that they are natural and healthy and root cause and, this and that. And it sounds very lovely, but is literally their biotechnology. That's what it is. That so much of it is synthetic biology. And so anyway, my point is just really be aware of products and watch. There was somebody that reached out to me, and she knew not to use any perfume, and she said that her son, this was a couple of years ago, her son really wanted, he's like a preteen, and he really wanted some cologne. And so she was researching, and she found this company that had natural cologne, and so she was so excited, and she bought him some. So I just went and looked at it, and it's literally that synthetic biology. So just because it's not a synthetic compound, a petroleum-based chemical, the synthetic biology is, they're calling it GMO 2.0. So it's actually as bad or worse. So the point is just be aware and really do your research.
And that's a big piece of why, as like a organization, people are always wanting us to have like this list. Like, give me a list of the companies that I can buy stuff from, or just give me a list of products that are safe. But that's a really tough thing to keep up because everything's always changing. Products, ingredients, where they're sourcing. Maybe they were using a real essential oil and now they've gotten this synbio because it's cheaper. Like, we want people to be empowered with this information so that when they are buying their own products, they can look at the list of ingredients, they can look at the company, they can look at the, sourcing and all of that back to where it comes from and make a choice. Like, you can keep up with that yourself. You can be empowered that you know what you're buying and where it's coming from. Where if we just give you a list, you're not going to understand any of this, or like, why is this company good and this company bad? Or why does this company have this product is good and this product's bad? If you understand these things, then you can really make those choices and know what it is that you're bringing into your environment.
Right. And if it's stressful to have to research this all the time, if you just don't use products and you make your own, and we talk about this a lot, stay as close to the natural, to the earth,
Right.
As you can, make your own, that kind of thing, then again, you become empowered and you don't have to worry about it. You don't have to research. It doesn't put you into analysis paralysis research.
Yeah.
But some good examples of companies, like Burt's Bees. That's a company everybody knows. That used to be a really good company when it started out. Like this guy by the side of the road,
With a B.
with a, but yeah, it was a really good company. It
Yeah.
was bought out by Clorox. I can't remember what year, but just that should tell you something.
Yeah.
So most companies that start out good, once they get big enough, big companies swoop in and want to buy them because they're making money. It all comes
Right.
back to money. Another one is Garden of Life. That was what's his name? David Avocado, that guy. He
I don't
started
know who David Avocado is.
David Avocado, I can't think of his last name. I like him, or did. He always has really good information, but he started that company. It was a really good company, and he was made, it was growing, and then Nestle came in and bought them out.
Right.
Nestle is like one of the F
They're not only bad because of ingredients, they're like awful to humans.
yeah,
Like,
child slave
yeah.
labor, all kinds of awful. They're company, but yeah, they bought them out. But the thing is, people don't even know. It's hard, people still think that's a good company, the Garden of Life.
Right. And that's why they keep the brand names because
Yeah,
it's already
don't
built
say
up.
Nestle on it.
Yeah.
Yeah, but those are just good examples, and those are just a couple.
Right. And it's hard because people will do that. Like, in your mind, you'll be like, wow, this local person that is, like Epiphany Farms. Wow, this is a great operation, great company. Why can't they just be available everywhere? Well, if they want to grow and expand, then they have to increase profit and then they have to streamline and then things have to change. So it is just really hard, like in accessibility. People want everything to be available all the time, easily, cheaply. And if it's not, then they complain. So you have to kind of change your mindset and understand, like, it's better to have something that's maybe not available all the time or costs a little bit more or takes a little more effort to put it together yourself. Because of all of these things, not just your personal health, but all of these other impacts that are going on.
Right. And another way to think about that, well, here's another example too. I was thinking when you're talking is Kerrygold butter, because they've always said they're grass fed. They're just grass fed butter. Well, several years, quite a few years, maybe 6 years ago,
Yeah.
big lawsuit against them because yes, they're grass fed, but then they finished the cows for like 3 years on GMO
Yeah.
grain.
Yeah. It was totally deceptive.
Yeah, very deceptive, and they're still being sold. But what I was going to say too is that if something has a commercial, or if something's being sold at Walmart or Walgreens or the big chain grocery stores, where you can get it anywhere. Probably just a good rule of thumb is maybe don't get it, because more than likely, if it's gotten that big, it's been sold out or there's something,
Right.
and not always, but it's just kind of a good rule of thumb to keep in mind. And then our last thing, we saved the elephant in the room for last. So we wanted to touch on the whole Kobe topic. And hopefully that's our, the words, we were just talking about words. Hopefully we get away with saying this stuff. So this is still a thing. Just remember, they're still really pushing those shots.
Yeah.
They're still under emergency use authorization. They started out under emergency use authorization, and they are still, and now we're like on the 8th
version.
That they're still recommending that you get. So, keep that in mind. Yeah. Also, the statistics right now are up to 17,000 deaths worldwide. And this is just, they say that that's like 1 to 10%.
Right.
Probably is what it is.
Yeah. So that's like reported, actually accepted, like within the medical community. And a lot of it's not reported or gets covered up, or just the connection isn't seen because it's not an immediate acute issue,
Yeah. And so 17,000 deaths and 1.7 million adverse reactions. And we're talking adverse reactions like autoimmune conditions, neurological disorders. I mean, it's not like
endocrine disorders.
Yeah. All kinds of heart problems. I mean, so 1.7 million.
Yeah.
If you think about any other shot that's ever come out, they pull it, or even pharmaceuticals in the past, they've pulled after if there were just a few deaths or a few adverse reactions, and that's what we're up to. So again, use your discernment. Also, the long COVID, and there's another one too, long something else. I can't remember what it is. Long haul COVID, and there was something else. Maybe it had to do with the shot. Anyway, but it's people that have now all kinds of autoimmune conditions and symptoms. Right. But in our own practice, we've had lots of people come in the last few years saying that their symptoms got much, much worse, or they didn't have symptoms before and now they do. So, we can see this proof on our end. And I will say also with our program, so far, we've been taking, I think I've said this before, but we've been doing the research, we've been keeping, track. And so far, everyone that has come to us is still healing, like everyone else.
It's just that, the threshold bucket, you are putting a giant tsunami into that bucket when you put something into your body that is just so synthetic, so experimental, so much going on with it that is bad, negative stuff. So you can see why your threshold bucket would all of a sudden overflow. But the good news is it doesn't seem to be like those super acute permanent issues are, if you get things fixed, you can avoid those
in enough time. So again, if you had it, don't get any more, and then get healthy now. The more that you get, the harder it is to heal. And that goes with anything. Right. But the other thing to remember with this is mRNA. This is that SynBio we keep talking about. And that's how I found out about SynBio in the first place. So that is gene editing.
Right.
So also keep that in mind as well. So we did want to touch on that because that is definitely, things have kind of settled down and gotten a little quiet as opposed to where we were a couple of years ago, but it has not gone away.
No,
And
it's just becoming normalized.
right. So yeah, just keep that in mind because it is definitely still here. Um, yes. So, but like we had somebody that we were talking to yesterday, and he had two, the original two, and then has had 4 boosters since then. And he's now just all of a sudden kind of woke up to what's going on. And he said, what have I done to myself? And
Right.
we went to where were we? Oh, when we went to the Health Freedom Expo in Chicago in October, there was a woman in the audience and she was listening and she's like, oh my God, what have I done? What have I
Right.
done? And she was crying, and people are still just kind of realizing, but our point is that there is hope. There are things you can do. We've seen it firsthand all the time, in our practice. Not just with this, but with all of this that we're talking about. You can be empowered, you can
Right.
heal still, no matter what. You can still resolve these issues and navigate through.
And the
That's why
best
we
way,
have our how to live healthy in an unhealthy world.
right, that's what I was going to say. The best way to be healthy and have the tools, make your immune system capable of fighting off anything that should come along, pandemic or common cold, is to build a foundation of health, to just live this lifestyle so that you have that all the time, so that when something big and scary comes along, you're not, making decisions out of fear because you know that you're not healthy and you're not sure what to do.
Then you know that you've done the best you can do,
Yeah.
and you are as healthy as you possibly can. And to take it back, we'll wrap this up. But I was just thinking about what we started out the last podcast with. That we were talking about that snowball effect and riding the wave. So that's what we're talking about. If you're living this lifestyle, you're going to ride the wave of whatever's coming. And remember, we started out that last podcast talking about the pandemic preparedness treaty that may or may not be voted in May, and most likely it may. And so that means that anything, even climate change, they can say, oh, emergency pandemic, and they can say emergency use authorization, and this is what you have to get, and they can make things mandatory. So even if they do all of that, and it sounds scary, but it is a really good possibility that will get put through, as long as you're doing all the right things, like what we tell you, with our Take Your Health Back Now system. You can ride that wave. That's your very, very best chance, without being fearful. So anyway, we hope that this information, it's a lot over the last 2,
Yes.
but it pertains to everyone. It pertains to all life on the planet right now. We are living in a crazy time.
Yes.
It is, in my opinion, an exciting time, because I really do believe all this is going to come to an end, but it's
Right.
going to be a bumpy road. But again, you want to be riding that wave. Not pull under into the undercurrent.
Yes. So be empowered, get your tools, try not to make decisions out of fear or pressure.
Right. But take
And
the
then,
knowledge and make your own choice.
yep.
Yeah.
So the next couple episodes, we'll try to stick to like one topic and dive deep into it. So this was kind of our big overview. Um, and I'm really glad to be back doing the podcast. So we will keep this up regularly. If you have questions, and you're in our Facebook group or you want to comment, I try to watch. It's a little distracting, but I think I'll get better at it. So if you're not in the Facebook group, join it. If you want to subscribe to our YouTube channel, you'll see it when it gets published. And of course, we're on all of the regular podcasting platforms as well.
All right. Have a good day, everybody.
Yes.
Bye.
Bye.